Good morning or good afternoon to everyone today. Thank you so much for joining us. I know always a couple of minutes late starting, but it's because it's my chance to get to talk to some people that I haven't talked to for a while. So a huge thank you to Rick for being here today. And our presentation is Beyond EDI, the automation of all trading partner transactions. So a big thank you to him, first of all, as we get started. Not just for doing the presentation today, but also to continue to support the user group by coming to the conference every year and doing these sessions and just being a resource to our membership. So a huge thank you for that. As we all know, I'd like to take a minute and acknowledge, of course, some very important people in my life, and that is our user group officers. So a huge thank you to Sam, Tim, Ted, Mike, and Tony for everything they do for the group. There's a tremendous amount of work that gets done behind the scenes, and whether it's Connect or Insights, but there's other initiatives they're working on as well. So I am so lucky to get to be in front of everyone every week for these webinars, and of course at Connect as well. But they're the ones that are actually on the ground doing some huge changes and representing you at Epicor. So if you have a moment, please send them a note of thanks because they certainly deserve it. They can all be reached at officers@P21WWU.org. One of the biggest questions I get following these webinars is, how do I find the recording? So what I highly recommend, you don't have to do this now, is go ahead and subscribe to upcoming sessions, which is about half the way down the forum screen. By going to that blue bar and choosing to subscribe to upcoming sessions, you will get an email notification every time we announce a new session, but also when we announce a recording is available as well. So go ahead and do that and make sure that you are getting those recordings as soon as they're available. And yes, registration is still open for Connect. Holy moly. We have 1,025 members that have registered as of this morning. So this is now beating our record from last year, which is about 975 members walking in the door. So this is incredibly humbling for all of the work we've been putting in for the past year to get ready for Connect coming up. If you haven't registered, please go ahead and do so today. You can find registration information by going to the user group forum. At the top right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see the Connect 2024 logo. When you click on that, that takes you over to our temporary Connect landing page that has all the information you need, including the session schedule, session descriptions, and registration information. There is very little room left at the Hilton Chicago at 720 South Michigan Avenue. We do have a second room block that is currently still open next door at Le Méridien. They still have some rooms available in that block. It is actually right next door and very close to the conference area and the conference doors of the Hilton. So you're super close. So if you haven't booked, make sure you're taking care of that as soon as you can. I'm not worried about SQL statements today, but I do like to cover this in the event that you are watching this in a recorded format or just as a general disclaimer for all forum posts as well. And that is just a reminder that all of the content you receive within the scope of the Profit 21 Worldwide Users Group is being shared in a volunteer capacity, and you should take any and all information in the spirit in which it's being offered. Always use your Play database and test anything you learn before going live. If you have any questions, please reach out to the IT professionals within your organization, the presenter of the session, others on the user group forum, or of course, Epicor. Lastly, of course, is my contact information. I'm here as your resource. So if you have questions regarding Profit 21, the user group, regarding Connect, if you have questions and you don't know where to find the answers, I think I probably get a few great calls every day with people looking for information. So please don't hesitate to reach out. That is what I'm here for. I'm going to be super honest. I am difficult to get a hold of by phone as we get closer and closer to the conference. But if you email me, I do try to get back to everyone within 24 hours. So with that, if y'all bear with me for a minute, I'm going to pass screen control over to Rick. And while he gets his screen ready, just a reminder that all questions preferably would be sent in using the question feature here in GoToWebinar. Please put them in as you think about them. If we have a lot of questions, sometimes I ask Rick just to take a pause so we can catch those up. But with that, I'm going to put myself on mute. I know we have a couple of polls to do, but I'll pause myself from now and let Rick take it from here.
Thanks, Cheryl. And one other thing, Cheryl, real quick. I don't know if it was me or just the connection, but it was kind of choppy in a couple places there. So please let me know if I end up being choppy because it may be me. So if I end up having some sort of internet speed issues, let me know. We are going to talk about EDI today for obvious reasons, but we're going to talk about more than just that. I want to grow the whole concept of what is EDI, and it's talking about all transactions with trading partners, not just specific ones, and that's what we'll get into today. I have a bad habit of talking too fast. So Cheryl has in the past been kind enough to tell me that, hey, we're running out of time, we're getting a little bit short on time, or we're going too fast. So if I get going too fast, we may end up with some extra time. I also do like questions as we're going through this. So if Cheryl interrupts me and says, hey, we've got a question, I'm all for that. I don't need to wait till the end to have questions. But we will be doing that if need be, is that we'll have the questions at the end. This is the agenda I have. This is meant for you, not for me, but this is what I have at this point. And if you saw in the little synopsis of what we're going to cover today, bring your questions, bring your debate, bring your discussion of topics of what is EDI and where does it fit, and is it really as complex as everybody makes it out to being. A couple polls just will hopefully help me know what you guys are looking for as well. I'm going to go through a little introduction of who I am, who Grey Wolf is, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time on that just so that you know where I'm coming from and where we're coming from on EDI. And then I'm going to pop through the next three fairly quickly. You know, what are some of the EDI industry statistics? What's going on in the industry? EDI has been around since the late 50s, but it's changed. And what are some of the pundits saying about where is EDI going? And I know that some of you are going to say, oh, you know, why are we really going to get into what is a trading partner? It's not the fact that everybody doesn't know what a trading partner is. It's more of a question of where are we today of what is a trading partner? What does that entail and how do we play with them? And that leads into then what is a transaction? You know, what are we defining as a transaction? And then I'm going to get into a little bit of it may come across salesy, that's not the intent, but to show you what an EDI implementation looks like, where it comes into play, and then the wrap-up's just basically just going through a summary and some questions. I am going to just simply say everything we have from Grey Wolf is on our website. We are as transparent as we possibly can. All of our pricing is out there. You'll be able to see all that when you go to our website if you do. Again, my name is Rick Sundahl. I am the president. I started this company many, many moons ago. I have more than my fair share of gray hair. I have been doing this for a long time, but my background is my dad was an auto parts distributor. And so I understand the distribution industry from a long time ago, back when I was doing Cardex and inventory management and dealing with, my dad was an auto parts, so I was unloading 40-foot trailers with batteries and air filters and fan belts and all that kind of stuff. So that's my background. But what is it that Grey Wolf does? Well, if you go to our website, you will see this. And realistically, we've changed a little bit. I'll go into our timeline here. This third one is a change for us. This was our e-commerce where we were offering Altitude as a solution for e-commerce, and we've actually gone open source with that, which means that you can actually take our code and run with it to create your own Magento website for real-time pricing and availability and orders and invoices. So that's kind of moved off to the side for us a little bit because we don't make a huge revenue stream off of that. Doesn't mean we don't support it or enhance on it, but our two focus areas are in these two areas. And if you get right down to it, this is what we're going to talk about today is transaction integration. We will talk a little bit about the product integration only because it does come into play with EDI. So our distinction between those two, I've had a lot of people ask me, what do you mean by the two? If it's a transaction, things like orders or whatever, that's going to come through our Partner Connect solution. And if we drop down on this, you're going to see Partner Connect is our EDI solution. That's the trademark name of our solution. And then Keystone is the trademark name of our product management system. But realistically, that's static information. So when you get into EDI and you start talking about product information that you want to share with people, whether it be customers or vendors, then that information probably fits better in Keystone, but it's still kind of an EDI concept. So that's why we don't see EDI as a word out throughout this whole thing. All of everything we do is all based upon our connectors. And this is a key architectural difference. Our connectors, and we focus primarily on the Infor and the Epicor arena, but the Prophet 21 solution, when we do EDI, we are not using scheduled importer, nor are we using the Infor middleware server. We're using our own set of APIs that we've been doing for a long time, and I'm going to get into the timeline here in a minute. But when you get to the Prophet 21 cloud, then you absolutely are using the Epicor's middleware servers for that. So if we go look at our timeline on this, what you're going to see is we started in 1992. We've been in business for over 30 years, and we have been doing EDI. This is the key year for our starting point, was Partner Connect started in 1997. So we have been doing this for a very long time. Our first customer using P21 was back in 2014. So we're on our 10-year anniversary. 9 years, Cheryl, we've been there a long time. I can't even imagine. I've known you for 10 years now. But we've been involved with as a sponsor to the Worldwide Users Group since 2015. And then you can read the rest of this as it's going through. We did get involved, for those of you that are in the hosted Epicor P21 environment. We've been doing that since 2019. Again, that's an introduction to us. That's a starting point for what we're going to talk about. But I now want to, I got to get back over to my slideshow. I now want to do a poll question. So Cheryl, if you do the first poll question so I can learn a little bit about who's on the call. So this question is, who are you using for EDI today? And I know I'm not trying to compare and contrast or disparage. I came from IBM, just so you guys know, and I was taught you don't disparage against your competitors. But I can't deny the fact for the P21 world, comp ratio is there. So I'm not going to argue with that. But let me know who you're with. And it's not, I'm not going to find out who you're with and start marketing and doing high pressure sales, but it's more gives me a feel for who am I talking to today so that I can actually tailor this appropriately. You may not have heard of SPS Commerce, and that I would have put into other, but I wanted to throw out there that there are more than just the two of us in the P21 world. I've known SPS, that actually stood for St. Paul Software, and they were around back when I was doing EDI back in the early 90s. Okay, my eyes are getting so bad, I gotta see if I can make the screen a little bit bigger here. Okay, so nobody's a customer, that's good. A lot of you are using other, and that's what I expected, was a very large share of you doing none. And so this is not a surprise, and I'm actually glad to hear that. So I'm going to tailor this presentation with the idea for those that are doing none. And for those of you that are using, other solutions, this may seem redundant, it may seem elementary, and I apologize for that. But I think, given the fact that we've got a good share of none, I don't want to get into EDI 101. That's not the intent. But I do want to get into EDI from a business perspective, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on. So let's get into some of the statistics. So these are not statistics from us. These are third-party statistics that you're going to find that I go through. And from Fortune Business Insights, they looked at the North American EDI software market size since 2019. Now, keep in mind, EDI has been around for decades, and I'm going to get a little bit into ANSI X12 and what is it and those kinds of things. That was the starting point. But they basically used on this that 2022 was a starting point of a 1.0. And you can see the growth rate that they're looking at on this. And then I put it down at the bottom. If you looked at the report, we're going to see some more charts out of this report. They're expecting a compound annual growth rate of about 12% for the industry for EDI software. And that being said, a different study was, okay, what in the global, what's the market share by type? And we're seeing the cloud-based, and oh, by the way, we happen to be cloud-based, as opposed to on-premise EDI software or a VAN, which we'll get a little bit more into what a VAN is and value-added network. But an EDI VAN is still a very large percentage of the market share for EDI on a software perspective. So if we come back to that same report, And I wanted to not have a chart necessarily, but you can read this as well as I do, but I'm going to point out a few things that are really kind of important. One is you're going to see this compounded annual growth rate of 12% is consistent between the two studies. It also talks about that 10% of the logistics, transportation, and road flow can be automated with EDI. You can read this one, but here's the one that I found the biggest important one. Revenues from, and I'm going to read this and so I can explain it. U.S. manufacturers' revenues exceeded $6 trillion in 2023, and 70% of those sales were coming from EDI. Now, I know you're distributors, but that's manufacturers, that 70% of those sales were coming from EDI. This is not my study. This is expert market research's study. So there's obviously, from a manufacturer's perspective, they're seeing value in EDI. Now, go back to that first study, and I'm going to have this as well as the US. That's why I highlighted this is the global data interchange, and it's by industry. And I would say distribution, in my definition, their definition, falls under that logistics, maybe a little bit of retail, maybe a little bit of manufacturing. But if you look at this, you can see that the lion's share of those three are who's taking up and seeing an advantage in EDI. If we look at the US version, doesn't change much. So the global versus a US, and some of you that may be international will see, even some of us that are like Cheryl that are Canadian, might see that this is actually something that's consistent, not only just in the United States, but worldwide. What are the benefits? And again, I'm pulling this from the study. I'm not trying to give you my definition of some of the benefits, and you can read some of this. But I do, while you're reading this, I want to talk about what is EDI in Gray Wolf's definition. In our definition, EDI is a lights out system-to-system transaction system. So in theory, if everything goes well and it's an idealistic situation, you never touch a transaction. That transaction goes from the business to the business and no humans involved. So people are putting things into their own PO system, and that automatically becomes an order in someone else's system, and vice versa. Someone puts in an order in their system and it automatically becomes a PO in someone else's system. And where we get a lot of economies of scale and improve upon that is because we're using our own set of APIs and we're not doing a store and forward approach. But the benefits that you're seeing right here are pretty much what's been going on for the last 50 years, if you will, or 60 years, that these same things are happening. And probably the biggest one is the human factor. You don't have the errors from the human factor that come into play because you're able to do this. But EDI is just not just ANSI X12. EDI is this concept of a system-to-system type of relationship with trading partners. So what are trading partners? And this has changed over time, but let's look at, and I'm just throwing some logos up there that we've done EDI with, and we do EDI with for our customer base. But these are the typical manufacturer kind of things. Now, I'm not going to throw customers up there, even though some of them may be, like, for example, 3M. 3M happens to be a customer for some of our customers, as well as being a vendor for some of our customers. But not everybody that's a customer is doing EDI. And we've got a P21 customer, we'll get into this a little bit as well, that they've got very, very small customers, and they don't want to have it where it's a barrier to entry to doing business with them. So instead, what they're doing is we've mapped it out to some things that are simpler that aren't ANSI X12. Let's go down that bunny trail real quick. ANSI stands for the American National Standards Institute. X12 is a standard that was meant for the idea of a standardized data format. The funny part about it is everybody's human and everybody knows everybody thinks they've got a better mousetrap. So even though ANSI did that, it didn't make it so that the guys like 3M didn't have the same standard type of approach. So the trading partners kind of come into play, and I use the rule of thumb is, are you the dog or are you the tail on the dog? In this case, if you're dealing with manufacturers and you are a large enough customer, you may be the dog. You may get to mandate to them. But as a general rule, you probably don't. You may be the tail on the dog. So you're dependent upon them for their specifications of how to do the integration. And then we go through a slight little different morphing of that when you get into guys like Costco. Or if you guys get into banking kinds of things where you're saying, okay, I want to do remittance advices and I want to deal with a bank. Or if you've heard of Coupa or Ariba, those end up being things, if you've maybe heard the term called punch out. Those are the things that you start getting involved with. So those become a different kind of a trading partner. And let's take it to where we're going really today now. If you really want to start growing your business, it may not be doing business to business kind of stuff. It may be doing business to an actual marketplace. And everybody you see on this slide, we are currently doing either with Partner Connect with EDI, or we're doing with Keystone from a product management perspective. We're integrating and sharing information with all of these players on here. And that's where the world has changed for over the last 50 years, because marketplaces like Amazon didn't exist. But you may want to be selling on Amazon, and EDI comes into play on that you don't have to worry about a human actually doing an interface with that. So that's why I wanted to talk about what a trading partner is. It's not just manufacturers and customers. It's more than that. All right, so Cheryl, if you throw the other poll question up for me, please. And there we are. So who are your current trading partners? And you can select more than one. I'm really curious to who's using marketplaces today, or even saying other. So we ran into a limitation on this, so I threw all the others into other. This could be things like buying groups. Maybe it's affiliated distributors. Maybe it's guys that you're working with through, that's not just a buying group. Maybe it's an association that you're doing it with. There are lots of different types of trading partners out there, and I'm kind of curious to who you're doing business and who you're doing with trading partner business with. And those of you that are saying none, even if you're doing it in a email or a hard copy snail mail kind of approach, please answer it that way as well. We close, Cheryl? There we go. Okay. Customers and vendors are the lion's share. Interesting. I will tell you, of our customers today that are using Partner Connect, you probably fit that same model of what percentage are doing just straight customers, vendors. We do have, though, quite a few, and when I say quite a few, I think we've got 2 or 3 P21 users that are going to Amazon, they're going to Shopify, they want to go to Walmart. We've got one that's using Wayfair. So we're seeing that start to change, and we're starting to see the change in the industry to start playing in those marketplaces. And that's why I keep saying this is just beyond EDI. This is actually now doing transaction sets with everybody that you do business with. Okay, Cheryl, if you go back to my screen for me, please. Thank you. All right. So what's a transaction? And again, most of you probably know what a transaction is, but let's talk a little bit about this. So while the idea is that if I have a customer, they go directly into their ERP system. By the way, an ERP system could be as simple as QuickBooks. And then they send it to the van or through the internet. We'll talk a little bit more about what the different types of communication technology is out there. And then it comes into P21 automatically. The bottom line, I will say this multiple times over and over again, is the exceptions. How do you deal with the exceptions is what's really important. And I'm gonna show you that when we get into the EDI implementation, is the idea of what are exceptions, how do you deal with it, what's the way you wanna play with this. But as we talk about this, a transaction could be through the marketplace, could be through the vendor. So if a customer is going out to Amazon and placing an order, and Amazon sends you an order via EDI, which is very likely impossible, then that is truly a transaction lights out, because you don't deal with the customer. And especially when you get into fulfilled by Amazon versus fulfilled by manufacturer, by provider, it's really interesting, because now your customer kind of becomes Amazon, even though the end user may be the actual person that's placing the order and using your product. And that's where we're seeing the industry start to change. Now, I had a little fun here. I'm a University of Colorado alum, and I will say this up front. I am not a fan of Deion Sanders, for those of you that have followed football, but I thought I'd have a little fun, because We call it the Big Eight. And back in the day when I was younger and going to school, there was the Big Eight football conference. So that's why I was having fun with this. But if you look at this, these are the ones that we focus on. We see the lion's share, it's the old Pareto rule. 80% of the transactions are coming from 20% of the types of documents. And so I put the ANSI standard, so an 850 is what is called for a purchase order in the ANSI world. An 855 is a purchase order acknowledgement, 856 is advanced ship notice, and an 810 is an invoice. And I tried to make it simpler so that you understood that when a customer is sending you a purchase order, which is effectively becomes an order in your system, that becomes an 850 in or a purchase order in. You guys can read the rest of them. I don't need to go through all that. If you want, you can actually go to this website and it will cover all of the ANSI documents that have been standardized. And it talks about what the document numbers are and everything else. Don't let that intimidate you. If you can get to these big eight, if you start doing business with customers and vendors and doing it both ways, this will get you the biggest bang for the buck. This is where you make the business decision. Don't worry about the 820s, which is remittance advice. Not today. Get going on the big eight. And then when the time comes that you want to start getting into remittance advices and you want to send it to customers and or you want to get them from vendors, that's a different discussion. You start going down that. And there are a whole bunch of documents out there that we do that are not, I wouldn't call them one-offs, but they're special. And in some cases, it's being required by the trading partner that's pushing that. What formats? These are the ones that, as a general rule, are out there. There are probably some exceptions to this. ANSI X12, and I'm going to show you a sample of an ANSI X12 document later on when we get into the implementation. We've got comma separated value or comma separated CSV files or Excel. We do support all those, or an XML file, and those of you everybody should know what XML is at this point, but basically with the tags and everything. And at one time, XML was going to be the answer to everything. And then PDF, this one's the cool one. So we've got a P21 customer that has a lot of small customers that they were sending in orders on a PDF. Now, keep in mind, a PDF is not a scanned in image. That's when you get into OCR or optical character recognition. But we're not talking about that. I'm talking about a data type of PDF, and I'll show you a sample of that. And if you do that, we've got the mapping technology to allow them to send in the same PDF file format all the time and bring it in as an actual document into P21 with no human intervention, or flip it over to the Excel side. We have a customer who has a customer that wants to see pricing. So that customer sends in an email to our server. It's a certain email address, so we know who the customer is because we know where it's coming from. They send in an Excel spreadsheet. And that Excel spreadsheet has their part numbers. That's all it's on, is their part numbers. We walk through, and in this case, this happens to be SX as opposed to P21, but we walk through all the products that are on that spreadsheet and convert them over to the ERP part number. We then go through for that customer, for a given warehouse, for a given unit of measure. We walk through and get that customer's pricing. We then populate the spreadsheet with their pricing and email it back to them. And that is all done within about 4 minutes. That is EDI just as much as some of the others. That's a transaction per se, because it's a document that's sending them information on the product information. The other piece of this puzzle ends up being connection. So it used to be that you always had to go to a van. And those of you that have been around long enough know the concept of a kilocharacter. And the idea you pay so much per kilocharacter. And when we started, we were charging for our Partner Connect. We used to charge on the concept of per document. So we didn't care about how many characters were on that document. We went to the United States Postal Service approach, which is kind of like, what's the price for a document? And we'd have a stamp on that envelope. Well, as time has gone on, the van has started, even though we saw in those statistics, the van is still a large player according to the industry statistics. We, Gray Wolf, are doing an awful lot with the other three, whether it be through FTP or secure FTP, or HTTP or website posting, or secure, it's either port 80 or port 443, or email, like the one I was just telling you. We've got the one with the PDF. What they're doing is they're emailing in the PDF file to our server, and we're parsing it out of that. So the connection is no longer about a file transfer from a van where you're paying them for the third-party processing. So our pricing model had to change as well. So now our pricing is now an all-you-can-eat approach based upon the idea of a trading partner connection. Well, the question then becomes, what are some of these things? What's a trading partner connection? Well, Partner Connect, actually, I'm going to take a quick breath. Cheryl, do we have any questions out there that I need to address before I start getting into implementation?
No, you're good right now.
Cool. Okay. So let's talk about Partner Connect. Partner Connect is our solution. It is a hosted solution based on the idea that it's lights out. So we have our own database, and I'll tell you it's based on SQL Server. I don't have a problem sharing what's under the covers. We use SQL Server Integration Services as our primary technology for this. So with SSIS, we are able to receive in through mapping, and again, I'll share this out with you as well. Those of you that may be on the idea, it used to be called TPCX from Epicor. They were using MapForce. We actually were using MapForce before they got into it, but MapForce is the mapping tool we use. We try as much as possible to limit the amount of MapForce mapping that's going on. We try to incorporate as much as we can into SQL Server and using SSIS. We just came out with a new version of version 5. Version 5 is so much more robust than what 4 was, mostly, and I'll show you some of this, in the ideas of we've separated out the concepts of reports and notifications and where packages are and what we call an adapter. That's the integration with P21 as opposed to using the scheduled importer. We use adapters with our APIs to do that, or the mapping, which is where we're communicating with the documents from the trading partner. So that's Partner Connect. Whereas Keystone is truly a product, you may have heard the term called PIM. Well, our philosophy is that all product information belongs in the PIM. So when we start getting into things like images and document definitions and getting back to the other, we haven't gone and converted the other Partner Connect that I gave you the example of getting the pricing. But when we start getting into product static information and potentially customer, we're not trying to be a CRM, but customer static information that you need to share with your trading partners, that may be going through Keystone instead of Partner Connect. So the distinction is it transactions like orders or purchase orders or acknowledgements, then that's going to go through Partner Connect, and product static information is going to go through Keystone. So let's go do a quick little look at Partner Connect. Now, if you'll see on our website, and again, first of all, I'm not going to go into it, but if you go into Partner Connect, you're going to see a few things. One, what documents we've done in the past. So if I go look at, you'll see on here, marketplaces, selling marketplaces, but let's just go to customer and vendor. If we go to 3M, you can see all of the documents that we've got. And as I said, they're both sides. So we got purchase order in and out with 3M. So you can go through and look at that. If you want to see our pricing, here's our pricing. I'm not going to get into this. That's not the sales pitch. But up in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see my account. And that's where I'm going to go into. And I'm going to go in for a little bit. I'm going to go in as a customer. And I want to show you what it would look like to you as a customer. And you'll have a series of menu items over on the side here. But the key to this whole thing is the concept of managing by exception. The idea is that if something fails, an order comes in from a customer and it fails. Best example of that is the customer sends in an order with a product that doesn't exist in P21. How do you deal with it? And if you think about that from a business perspective, there are a lot of different ways to do it. Any more than when someone's on the phone as an inside sales rep taking an order, all we're doing is automating that process. So if the order comes in and it's an item that is in their product number that doesn't exist in P21, either because it's not in the cross-reference table or because it's a non-stock or whatever, you need to have it so that you've got the business rules such that it handles it accordingly. When we have that, when we do the original mapping, we do the adapters, and we receive these things, you will tell us how you want to deal with it. It could be by trading partner. It could be by trading partner by document. It could be a whole bunch of different things of how you put those business rules into place. But I'm a monkey when I'm an EDI. So I'm going to do it the same way over and over and over again. Well, the key to that's going to be is managing by exception. And so when it comes in and it doesn't meet those business rules, I may need to make some changes. Well, one of the key portions of that is I may need to be able to do a document submit and resubmit. So if I go say I want to do a purchase order, and let's go do a purchase order in search. And these are all of the purchase orders that have been out there for a while, and I can scroll through it. And if I go back to the new search, you can see I can put some other restrictions on this. I can say the status of it, they've been processed, ready to process. I'll say all again, and I can, oops, if I go back to the new search, I picked the wrong, let's go to purchase order and try this again. And these are all the documents. I can go into them. I can actually say, okay, I find them. I can say check order for order maintenance, and I can actually then modify it here if I want to. May not be the right decision, but that's a business rule you may want to take. And then I can resubmit, and those are the things that I can do within our system. Now, that also being said, one of the things I may want to do is I may want to look at an order or a sales order or something along those lines, and I want to look at where the status of it is. So let's go take this order number, and I'm going to go over here and go back to the document management. And one of the things we created, those of you that may have been in Domino's, you may recognize this, that oops, that didn't find. I love it when a demo happens this way. Let's go back actually here, and I'll just pick one that I've got as an option. Let's go pull this one that I did before. Nope. Let's go pull this one. There we go. So what this is telling me is what's the status on this order? And has the PO been received? Has it been acknowledged? And I can actually see where I am, kind of like I do in the Domino's tracking, to go see where's the status of a given document. Now I'm going to log out and come back in because that customer doesn't have all the robust functionality that I want to show you. So I'm going to log in as administrator, oops, as info, not as administrator. And what you're going to see is this is me as an administrator on the system. So there's a lot more that I can do. And as a customer, you don't see that. That's why I wanted to show that first part. Well, one of the things I can do is I can go and look at document count. And I'm going to go and say, okay, I want to pick a customer, and let's go pick Central States. And I can go see how many documents. This is that, if you saw on that list of benefit, you can actually see when you're talking to, say, Tyson. And you can say in the month of January in 2024, I had 18 functional acknowledgments, which a functional acknowledgement is kind of like fax saying that it was sent. But I did 42 invoices. I did a message is a unique kind of a document, but I had 32 inbound orders. And you can see there, that's the kind of documents, or if I'm dealing with John Deere, I can see where I was with them. I had 60 invoices outbound that I sent out because they sent 21 invoice or purchase orders in. So they placed orders of 20, but there are a bunch of invoices that were sent out that were maybe taken by inside sales reps. And if I keep going through on my account, and what are some of the other things I have available to me, is I have the ability to go look at email addresses for reports. Well, one of the cool things here is, and I'm going to pull up Glazio, is I can pick by document. So they're doing Wayfair, for example, and I'm going to send an invoice out that it was sent. I can pick and choose who's receiving that report on that. Or if I want to manage by exception my invoice inbound detail, I send it to other people. This allows me to manage who's going to see these exceptions, handle the process accordingly. Keep in mind, we're not trying to tell you what to do. We're trying to enhance the way you do business. And now with these reports, you're able to do that yourself and walk it through. And then as you're going into it, maybe you say, the customer is saying, or the trading partner is saying, hey, I sent you this, but you guys aren't handling it right. Well, one of the things we can do is we can actually go in and look at the raw data on this. So the first one I'm going to go to is Central States. I'm going to go purchase order in and do a search. And if I go look at it, these are all the inbound purchase orders that are out there. I can click on one of them. This is what an ANSI X12 document looks like. You've got your segments, you got your ISAs, your GS segments. Those of you that know EDI will have seen this before. You can actually see the actual document that's related to it. Well, let's go back and look at a different one though. I want to go look at raw data, and I want to go and look at Selecta. Selecta is the one I was telling you about that's got purchase order in, and I'm going to go look at one of these. This is what we get in the inbound. This was emailed to us. It includes all of the line items, includes who's it going to, and it's in a PDF format. And we've been processing that document from the email from this specific PDF data format, and it goes all the way through and ends up in P21. Now, there are exceptions to it, and that's how you got to manage it. But in this case, we have the information coming in automatically and hitting everything we need to hit in P21. Okay, that was the majority of what I wanted. I think there was one other thing, bear with me here. Oh, cross-references. So in cross-references, this is kind of important, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but you can see here, I can have for an ANSI X12 to the ERP add-on. The one that a lot of people use is ER product to customer product. So that's saying, okay, I've got a P21 product, I'm going to match it up to the customer part number. And that's where you can manage those things. Well, you may not want to do it one at a time. So one of the things you can do is you can download this cross-reference spreadsheet, and let's go look at that. I've got one here. I didn't fill it out, but I can show you what the template looks like. That these are the exact same places that you can just keep a table of each one of these, like for product number. Okay, for what company? Here's the vendor number. Here's the product number, contract number, warehouse code. That crosses over the vendor number to the vendor contract number. Or if I keep going across, I can go look at ANSI unit of measure to ERP unit of measure. So you can create this cross-reference, maintain this in a spreadsheet, and then when you get done with it, you can upload it, and it'll upload into our database so that we then do all the mapping and allow for you to have those things that you need to have as a cross-reference. And if something fails, you go and update this cross-reference table and maybe resubmit the document so that you aren't dependent upon us. You're not being held hostage by us by saying, hey, would you guys rerun this? Gray Wolf, can you fix this? Why did this fail? You're going to know a lot of this yourself and be self-service. Now, I don't want to overcommit. Keep in mind that it doesn't always end up being perfect. There are going to be times that you end up having to have us get involved because there's things you don't understand that was going on. You don't get billed for things that are bugs, but you will get billed when it's data related and if it's not being handled correctly. We try to give you as many self-service pieces. Again, it's the idea of let you handle it yourself, but we're not going to be able to do every single one. So majority hopefully is handled that way, but maybe not all the time. Okay, let's go back here. So I'm going to give Cheryl a little bit of time at the end. I'm going to spend a few minutes to kind of go back through what we're talking about. One, EDI is not your father's technology. There are a lot of people out there that are like, God, you're still doing EDI? How can you do that? That's legacy technology. You start talking to the millennials and the Gen Zs and really EDI? Well, it's not old school technology today. It's new. It just happens to have been around for a while, and it really needs to be kept current using APIs as opposed to using a flat file approach. It needs to be done with all of the right tools so that you can be self-service and make it into a true automation of all your transactions, not just the ones that are ANSI X12. And it's affordable, straightforward, and understandable. if I didn't get into the pricing, but what we're charging you for is to start out as 445, I think it's 445 or 495, I can't remember which, for the certain number of trading partner connections. And what's a trading partner connection? That's going to be as simple as saying, I've got an 850 out to 3M. That's one trading partner connection. I've got an 810 in from 3M. That's another trading partner connection. That's how we're billing it now. It's no longer based on kilocharacters. It's no longer based on transaction prices. It's all based upon the idea of how do we make it a win-win situation. And we're supporting all the different types of partner types. It's not just the vendors and customers. It's the marketplaces. It's the buying groups. It's the associations. All the different types of documents that are out there, and all the different types of connectivity, whether it be FTP or WAN or HTTP or email. So it doesn't need to be so overwhelming as it has been. So for all of you that are out there saying none, talk to me. Let me know what we can do so we can make this a very simple, get it started. I'm a believer in evolution, not revolution. You don't have to do all your trading partners at once. Start out with a couple. Start out with the low-hanging fruits. Don't try the toughest ones. Don't go out and do things. SPS Commerce is working with guys, and if you talk to Selecta, for example, SPS Commerce is a pain in the ass to work with. And don't start out with those trading partners that are using SPS Commerce. Start out with the simpler ones that aren't as difficult to work with. If you would like to see me face to face and we can go off and have a beer, we are going to be at Connect like Cheryl was talking about. We're going to be in booth 103. We're actually going to be coming in a little earlier. There's going to be a couple of happy hours on Saturday nights, so we'll be there. So if you want to catch up beforehand, send me an email and let's try to get together. And speaking of sending me an email, here's how you can reach me. Pretty straightforward. That phone number is accurate. You probably won't get me. We're spending a lot of time on Teams, and so we don't use the phones as much as we used to. That doesn't mean we don't answer the phone. We will answer the phone. If you want to talk to a human being, we are not offshore support. We are all United States support. We are all complete. I don't believe in the idea of trying to say, okay, you got to sit in a queue for 20 hours before you're going to get hold of somebody. We do work on email a lot, mostly because our customers like doing it that way. But if you don't, we'll work with you in different ways of communicating. If it makes sense to do that, we'll do that with you. All right, Cheryl, do we have any questions out there?
We absolutely do. So first one, how does it handle documents with the same PO number? For example, a customer sends a PO and pricing needs to be corrected, and they have to send a revised PO. If the PO already exists in Profit 21 and the order is on hold waiting for the revised PO, would the system be able to flag it to say that it already exists, but pricing is different now, or flag it for someone else to look at?
That is a great question for me to answer, probably the lion's share of questions like that. I come back to, we're a monkey. And I use the statement, be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. The question's going to come back to you. How do you want it to work? Now, the kicker to it is we're going to do it the same way as a general rule for everything. Now, we can put exceptions in based upon trading partner and that kind of stuff, but let's say it's the same trading partner that this happens a lot. And the first time you want it to override the first PO, second time you want to have it create a second PO that's separate, and so that the buyer or the inside sales rep chooses between the two. Or the third option maybe is don't update it, but send me an email. As long as it's consistent, we can do any one of those three. We can work with you on that, again, because we have I'll also put in a little caveat onto that. I'd follow up with, are you on P21 Cloud or are you on P21 On-Prem? If you're on P21 On-Prem, we can control that because we control the APIs. If you're on P21 on Cloud, you are now at the mercy of the middleware server that Epicor provides. So if Epicor doesn't allow for those kinds of things that we want to do from a business rule perspective, we're going to have to go back to them and ask them to modify some of those things, which may take a while. This is probably one of the bigger reasons why I push people If you're looking to try and not have inside, have IT support, then you might want to think about going to something like Estes and have it hosted instead of going to P21 Cloud, because then you can control your own environment on things like that. But if the P21 Cloud is supported and it fits all the things you want to do, we can do it as well. We're very flexible. The hard part is being consistent. That's where you got to think it through. And it's more of a business question than as a technological question. So if you have a follow-up question, pop one in for Cheryl, or we can talk offline if you'd like.
Okay, next question. How difficult or time-consuming is the mapping of customer POs to be read and imported?
That is a great question. Someone's been doing this for a while. It really depends. If you're dealing with guys like Walmart, it's a pain, even though we've done Walmart. Or if you're dealing with guys like Wayfair or Home Depot, they all think that they've got standardization and they really don't. The other people, if you control it, it's actually pretty straightforward and easy. The mapping technology is not difficult. It really isn't. The problem becomes the exceptions and how do you set the business rules into that. They're called functoids in MapForce to do that mapping, to have that all set up. That's actually pretty easy stuff. The hard part is making sure it works for all the different ways they do it. And testing comes into a big portion of this, because if you don't have good test documents that cover all the different permutations of how it's going to work, when the exception comes, now you got to redo mapping. That's a pain in the butt, and it gets to be expensive to do that. So it's not difficult technologically, it's difficult process and relationship wise with your trading partners. That's where it gets to be fun. And so if you've got a good relationship with your trading partner, then it makes it a lot easier. If you don't, it's kind of like reverse engineering a lot of stuff. We've been doing this for a long time, that's why I put on there, since 1997, and it really hasn't changed over time, not because the technology hasn't changed, because it has, but because people haven't changed. Hopefully that answered the question.
All right, next question. Do you have customers who use this for the data PDF imports alone?
Yes. Alone? No, they're doing it for others as well, but they are, I think, 90% on data PDF.
Next one. Does the program talk back to, let's say, Ariba to confirm orders in the customer's portal?
Let me think that back. First thing I heard was, when I heard talk back, all I could think of was a teenager talking back, but talk back to a customer's portal. In theory, the answer is yes. I don't know if one is an example of where we've done that, but in theory, if that portal has the ability to receive data, the answer would be yes. If the portal requires a human to intervene, then there's a thing in EDI called rip and read, where what we could do is we could create a document that's just a report, and a human being would then have to key it in, but at least the report would be automated and would be something that someone would be able to work with easily, as opposed to having to go and try and find it. Rip and read has been around for a long time. I'd have to know more details of what the interface is to the customer portal.
Okay, next question, and this is regarding pricing. So if you prefer to take this offline, I'm happy.
No, I have no problem with that. I have no problem with taking pricing. Yep.
Okay, so if the pricing starts at 15 trading partners at $445 a month, is there a slow start program, say at a 1 requirement pricing?
I didn't understand. Can you repeat that again for me, please?
So if you didn't have 15 trading partners, do you have something kind of smaller for people?
No, that's the smallest. That's why we put it in here as up to 15. Okay. So if you have 1, that's the price. And I've gotten the same kind of pushback on the other side. When they get to 101, they have a problem that they're jumping up $1,000 a month. And again, I understand what they're saying, but the idea is to try to make this as simple of pricing as we could.
Okay, so we're caught up on questions, but I know I tossed a lot at you. So is there anything else you wanted to circle back to and touch on again out of those questions?
No, probably the only thing I'd say is if I miss something, you have a personal, something that's a little off the wall and you think of it later, please feel free to reach out to me via email.
Well, with that and with no other new questions coming in, of course, I'm going to see you in about 6 weeks. Oh my
Yes, you
God.
are.
Yeah. And so that's exciting. And of course, this session was recorded. It will be posted on the user group forum. Sometimes it can take 24 hours to get there, but we will post as soon as it's able. And you'll find it again if you go to the upcoming sessions. And if you subscribe there, if you do that right now, then as soon as I post that recording, you will get that email notification. So Rick, thank you so much for today. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Sounds great. And stay cool. I know you said you're hot. Stay cool.
Yeah, it's hot up here. So everyone have a fantastic day and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.